How's it going, everybody? Hope you guys are doing amazing. Today we have an amazing podcast for you with Kim Noel, who is currently a developer and a big community builder working at Microsoft. Now, in this podcast, we cover a lot of topics. We cover how she got her first job, why she went to software development. We cover how she literally went to a hackathon almost every single week to build out her connections, to put herself out there, and to make friends. Then we also cover on how to build out your portfolio and how to become a great quality developer and team member, because that is very important if you want to grow as a person and grow in status at a company, for example. We also cover diversity and how to speak out if you're underrepresented. All of that and so much more on this podcast. I really hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and I have all the social media links to me and Kim in the description. Let's do this, guys. So, Kim, I'm just going to introduce you a little bit, just kind of like a short introduction. So, you're an amazing developer, obviously. You worked at companies like GitHub, Auth0, and currently Microsoft, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. You're involved in the developer community, by being with things like Major League Hacking and being part of Our Code and so much more. Mm-hmm. You also speak, and I think you're an awesome human being overall.
A nice little intro, I'm not gonna lie.
So, Kim, thank you very much for kind of coming on and speaking with me and taking the time out of your day. I know you're very busy, but I'm very happy, so thank you.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So I kind of wanted to, get to know you, obviously, and kind of ask you some questions, about development, about your career in terms of how you got started, and things like that. So kind of take me through, how did you get into development? How did you get into computer science and software and so forth?
So it's actually a funny story. So I'm from Quebec, so we have Cégep, which is school between high school and university, because we only go up to grade 11.
Really?
So when I was applying for Cégep, you have to run through the programs and see kind of what you're interested in. And when I read computer science, it was described as, do you like solving puzzles, problem solving? And I was like, yes.
Uh-huh.
I signed up for it and ended up loving it. I had never really done programming before. Got my laptop only because I was in computer science at the Cégep level, and then I went on to university to do software engineering / computer science, and that's kind of how I got started specifically in programming, I would say.
Interesting. So how long was that period between university and high school? How long of that period is that? For a pre-university, it's 2 years. For a technical, which I did, is 3 years, but I did it in 4, but that's okay. Wait, so it's in 4, the whole thing is in 4 years between high school and university?
Yeah, well, a normal person would do probably 2 years if they're doing a pre-university program.
Okay.
The computer science is a technical, so you don't have to do university. You can go straight to the workforce, and that's a 3-year program. But I took 4 years to do that 3-year program. I gotcha.
Yeah. But okay, so you liked puzzles, you liked maybe a little bit of math and so forth, right? What really intrigued you about computer science? Did you try computer science, or did you try some software development? They're like, yeah, I love this, I'm gonna do this.
Well, I was always interested in graphic design kind of thing. Which is odd because once I got into computer science, I didn't continue thinking I could do also graphic design stuff. I thought I just didn't have the capability, I guess. I liked art, I liked drawing and everything, but as soon as I went into computer science, I ended up liking the more back-end side, I guess you would say, or the more just kind of solving puzzles, because I saw every assignment that we had as a challenge to figure it out. And I liked that there was not necessarily just one way to do something, right? When you're programming, I think that's the charm of it, is there's no one right way. End of the day struggles, trying to speak now. But yeah, so there's I mean, there's more appropriate ways to do things, but there's no 100% solution, right? So that's kind of the charm that I really liked about programming, basically.
I gotcha. Yeah, no, that's cool. That's kind of how, I also kind of came into it. I came into it back in high school, and what kind of intrigued me, so I took a web design class in high school, I think my 11th grade, and interestingly enough, that web design course was the only course that was like, computer focused. It was the only course that was computer focused, and you were allowed to take it for only one semester. Now, I took it, and I loved it so much that I'm like, you know what? Can I keep retaking it every semester? So literally what I did is I just kept retaking it every single semester for 4 semesters straight. And interestingly enough, the way I kind of did it is, since there was no room for me in the actual like classroom, what the teacher did for me is they had like a closet.
Oh my gosh, okay, where's this going?
Well, so it was a closet space where she stored all her books. It wasn't that bad, but it had a desk and so forth, but it was kind of like away from the classroom. And like, she's like, how about you bring your laptop, you have a desk there, you have a chair, sit there, and I'll give you some tasks, and then you'll learn.
Nice, that's awesome. So you're always probably, I would say, like, always going one above and beyond because you just really like what you were doing.
I just really liked what I was doing, honestly. Like my senior year, what I ended up doing was I secretly developed redeveloped their whole site for my high school. Secretly. I didn't actually tell the teacher. I was just kind of doing it.
Nice.
and then at the end of when I actually finished it, I just kind of came to her. I'm like, okay, so I have this design, do you like it or not?
Yeah.
and then she's like, yeah, I love it. And then next thing you know, I actually end up working with another developer, and we actually put up that site online, and that site was live for the whole high school for about 3 years, basically.
Nice.
So yeah, so that was kind of how I got into it, and I was like, you know what, I kind of like this. I'm gonna try it.
So would you say more like web stuff what you're into, or?
So I think web is more in tune. That's kind of what I started with, right? Mm-hmm. But I just love the whole notion of, like you said, just like it's a puzzle, right? Yeah. And the part of it is like, you have this idea of what you want to make, right? Now the question becomes, what are you going to do to actually make it? How do you divide it up, right? And especially working with other people, like that's even amazing. If you have other people working with you that are just as, intrigued by it, like that's the best part, For sure, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, and it's been like that ever since. So that's been interesting. But like, so what was your first project? I'm curious that you worked on.
Oh my gosh, first project.
Yeah.
I don't think it was the first project, but the first one I remember off the top of my head was like, you needed to design this was part of school specifically, right? Mm-hmm. It was a school assignment. It was, you had to design a credit card, how do you say? Like it outputs the numbers. So like Visa has to start with a 4.
Oh, I see. You had
to design a program that would generate these numbers for credit cards, right? Because credit cards have like specific things. They're always like 16 digits or whatever. So that's the first one I remember doing off the top of my head, but I don't think it was actually probably the first one, but I remember that one specifically.
Awesome. And so you guys generated credit cards, and then you kind of use those credit cards for your own purposes.
Exactly. No, oh my gosh, actually now that I'm telling you, I'm like, that sounds terrible. No, we were specifically advised that like this is not a living, just for the purpose of the course.
I know, I'm kidding.
But yeah, and not too exciting of a project, but again, just like figuring out like, okay, how do I,
right?
But like you said, like Visa specifically needs to have this, Master has this, and like having those like rules that you need to follow and play around with, right? So,
right. I gotcha. Okay, so you went into college, obviously, and then so how did you actually, get your first job, right? Because obviously, I looked at your LinkedIn. You worked at a lot of places, huh? So how did you kind of, get into the workplace? Because a lot of the audience that I know, a lot of developers that I know, from Instagram, and I'm sure you know as well, they have a problem of actually getting that first job. They have a problem of getting into the field, either during college or after college. So what was your kind of process?
Definitely. Well, I would say like in terms of the way I got my first like full-time job, I'd rather kind of talk about that because in university, I started going to hackathons, right?
Okay.
That was a really big thing in my life, I would say, like a really big significant moment because that's when I started realizing that like I could make a living out of this and enjoy it, right? Because yeah, there's tons of jobs in tech, but maybe not necessarily I would be happy doing just about anything, right? And so going to hackathons really exposed me to a few things, right? So it was figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like. So playing around with different languages, frameworks, testing out software, hardware stuff, like a bunch of different things. It introduced me to people that really loved what they did too. Like they just wanted to, a lot of them just wanted to build really cool stuff, right? Like the people that go to these events are usually really awesome people, right? And so in a way I kind of got addicted because I think it was in 2015 or 16, every weekend I was at a different hackathon. So I got to go to Yale, I got to go to Harvard, like all these big Ivy League schools, I got to go to their competitions and meet some of the coolest people. And I didn't realize at the time, because it was organically, it wasn't intentionally, I was building my network of software developers because we're now at that stage where we're in the companies and we're making the decisions and we're making that change, right? So it really helped to be out there, just talking with people and like really wanting to listen to them and not just being like when you go to the career booth or whatever at a hackathon. Right. You're not just like, hey, I want a job. It's like, what do you do? Like, what does your day look like? And like really listening and understanding what they do because like I said, I was meeting all these people and they would see me every weekend coming back because it was at that time, it was like developer evangelists usually was the same ones that went to all the hackathons. And so they would see me around a lot. And so kind of started making a name for myself that way, right?
Really?
I wasn't the best coder. I'm not the best coder, right? But I'm just very curious. I really, I like working with other people. I like solving puzzles. And so how I ended up actually getting in at GitHub was because they had a GitHub Campus Expert program. So it's for students, which is a really awesome program, not to like steal away from what we're talking about, but that really trained me to kind of know how to do public speaking, blog posts, just really preparing me for the real world. And this is kind of all free. And when I was going to hackathons, like that's when they launched the program. And so I have a whole like blog post about it if people are curious about that program. Please don't go look at it. But so it was because I was just out there going to meetups, user groups, and just getting to know people and that's awesome. Organic way. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. It's very organic. It's not like pushy, right? It's not like, shoving into everybody's faces your resume, and be like, just take me. I love that part. like it's, it's, you're just being yourself. You're getting to, I think it's, the personal connection is something that a lot of people do not, I feel like it's underrated, in terms of when you're trying to get a job, it's not really about, like, for example, as we know, probably, getting a job, a lot of it comes actually through relationships, like through connections. I personally got my first job through a connection, right? And actually my first job, my second job, and my third job, I got that through a connection. Literally. So, and the fact that you went to hackathons and then, and people start to know, you're like, well, this girl's, we see this girl every week. Who is it?
It's kind of sad. It's like, she's here again? Like what are you doing?
What are you doing here?
But I like that you mentioned, like, really just being yourself because people can tell when you're being fake or not, you know what I mean? And so I think it's really important, especially nowadays, to kind of not hide not think that you need to hide who you are. There's ways to shine and be yourself at the same time. It's not always easy, but I think that's really important to kind of stay true to who you are. when you're doing, when you're going on in your career, right? So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so you went through that program of, so it was a GitHub program, and it was meant to teach you things like what? Things like speaking, things like writing blog posts, and and then kind of what did you go after that?
Yeah, so it has a combination of like training modules, and so there's some core skills which some people refer to as more soft skills, so talking and that kind of stuff, presenting. And the other one is technical, so there was also technical stuff too. And so it's actually cool because I got to build two of those modules. One was on creating an open source club at your university or college, whatever kind of educational establishment you're at, and also build out the Atom plugin, building Atom plugin extensions. And so I had an internship with them in the summer, continued after working with them a bit on the education team for that program. And then so during that time, I actually had a speaking opportunity to go speak in Colombia at a conference. And someone at that time who was also speaking saw me speak. This was in like October of I don't know what year. And then a few months later in February, he contacted me saying, "Hey, I'm building out my community team. I think you'd be great. You should apply." And so I did, and I ended up getting a job there. And that's how it moved on to the next.
Who was building out the community team? Was it someone at GitHub, or who?
No, it was from another company who had saw me speak at the conference. So GitHub gave me the opportunity to speak. And that speaking opportunity months down the line led to my next career job.
Really? That's interesting. That's very cool. That's awesome. Okay. Now, so I understand that. Now, so is that kind of also how you got into your speaking career, right? Because I know you're a speaker now. I haven't seen you speak. I really want to see you speak. I'll definitely, because I don't see. Do you have any videos of you speaking, like, or anything like that? Because
I think there's maybe one video online. A lot of the talks I do are not recorded, unfortunately. That just means the people gotta come see me in person. No, but yeah, no. I think there's only one online, and it was during a workshop, so it's not the best kind of video, I would say.
I gotcha.
But yeah, sorry, what was the question?
So the question was, how did you get into speaking, right? So was that, you got your first speaking gig through GitHub, and then how did you kind of continue through that?
Yeah, well, actually, so even before that, I used to organize the Canadian University Software Engineering Conference, and I think it was the first year. So at the end, they were giving out prizes, like a little raffle. Okay. And they told me like maybe 30 minutes before, Kim, you need to go on stage and do this. And I was freaking out. This is maybe 500, 600 people. And I need to read off people's names, and I'm terrible at pronunciations, right? So I'm even more nervous. So I remember that as like my first real public speaking experience. That's the first one. But just to roll back a bit, when I was in school, I was terrible at presenting. I was always so nervous. I remember one time in English class, I was presenting and I was literally shaking. I was so nervous. And someone came up to me after and they're like, "Are you okay? You were like visibly shaking." Like, I hate public speaking. Like, I hate talking in front of people. I'm fairly shy.
Really?
So yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, seeing you, from Instagram and talking to you or not, I wouldn't say that you're shy. So how did you get over kind of that fear?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something I think about a lot, because when I reflect on those times, there's no way I would have saw myself speaking in front of hundreds of people. Like, there's no way. Right. And so I think what it came from, it was like, I loved watching other people speak, right? When they do a really great presentation and it really motivates you and moves you, like, I wanted to be able to do that, right? Right. And so the only way to do that is to do it. Right? Yeah. And so it's really hard, because the first few times you're so nervous, the presentation is it's not that good, right? And it's really hard to keep motivated. But I think having the people that I did at that time, very supportive, who knew that I was capable of eventually getting to that point where I could do a presentation and not shake and not be completely like reading from my slides and stuff like that. I think it was really helpful to have people like that who are like, we can see you one day being that person on stage giving a keynote. Just the only way to get there, Kim, is to keep doing it. And like, you always get a bit nervous before talks. That's never going to go away.
Right.
But yeah, you just got to keep doing them. And now I've done, I can't even count how many. So, yeah.
I will come and I will see one. I promise you that. I promise you that. That's what, yeah. I mean, so that's interesting. You just kind of, you went ahead and you just kind of did it. And, and I mean, I understand you. I mean, I'm not a speaker, obviously, but like, I was really shy in high school. Like, in high school and middle school, I was the shyest kid. Talking to someone, was difficult, especially girls. For me, for some reason, I don't know why. but as I got older, and actually a lot of things changed, interestingly enough, when I started doing Instagram. So when I started doing Instagram, and I started just simply filming myself through a video camera, right? I found myself just kind of, just being myself and not being afraid to talk. Even though at this time I was talking, to a camera, I was talking to someone who's out there, right? But that kind of made it so much easier for me. And forward I think I've been doing Instagram for 3 years now, and I feel so much more confident now. Obviously there's still a lot to work on, but I know for myself that it's been such a big transition to speaking. And now what happens is you get, and I'm sure you know this, you actually get the energy from the audience, like the audience, and it actually energizes you,
Yeah.
So that was the crazy thing, and I love that part now, and it's a lot of fun now.
Yeah, there's two things I want to mention there. So one of the things that kept me going was one time I gave a presentation at a hackathon, and it was later on in the night, like everyone was talking, and I was so rattled. It wasn't a good presentation, but someone emailed me after and was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, like, I know it was unfortunate that no one was really paying attention, but I really appreciated your talk. You were great." And that meant the world to me.
Really?
Like, just like if folks are out there and you see a really great presentation of someone who maybe is a bit nervous, or even not nervous, but just give a really great presentation or something, like, let them know. It's so much appreciated.
Right.
And then the other thing that I was gonna say is, now I forget, but it was important. Sorry. So it was, you know how you mentioned like 3 years ago, maybe you never would have saw yourself doing much on Instagram, is like, I think people really underestimate or undervalue like the long run, right? Like they think about, I'm never going to get there, but it's about visualizing those small steps and making those baby steps. Because if you would have told me 5 years ago I'd be working at Microsoft, I'd be like, no way. Like, what are you talking about now? Or doing these presentations to 100 people, like, never would believe you. So
right.
Easy for people to see this now, like see me on stage now or see you on Instagram now, and be, oh, they're so lucky. No, we're not lucky. We just work really hard at what
we just work really hard. Exactly. Yeah. So I understand that, and I'm totally with you. Now, so one thing I kind of wanted to ask is, so obviously you went to GitHub, right? Now, how about all those other opportunities that you got? Things like Auth0 and things like Microsoft. Was that again through now at this point relationships, or because obviously you speak a lot, and so a lot of people see you, right? Is that now through that, or was it literally just you applied and so forth?
Actually, no. So I think a lot of the opportunities that I got in my career were because of people seeing what I had done previously, especially because I work in developer relations, right? It's really about being out there, working with the community, right? Like being out on, let's say, like Stack Overflow, like digital, like the digital space, being in the, I guess, physical space. So like talking, doing webinars, like being present, right? And just like showing that you care, is what led me to I would say, if not all my opportunities, because I had jobs prior to GitHub that were like small, like QA testing and stuff like that, that I believe I probably did apply for, and it was just kind of the normal chain of
right.
These really, exciting and cool opportunities have come to me because folks have either recommended me or known me from or saw me somewhere and been like, hey, I think you'd be great for this role, which is maybe not as easy to do in like straight up software engineering. But I think there is a lot of potential there, right? Because if you're out there, you're working on open source projects, you're out there in the open source community. This shows that you care, right, about what's being built and stuff like that. So I think people shouldn't underestimate that this kind of activities and stuff won't get them to like a full-on software development job. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So
yeah. I mean, I think definitely, especially nowadays, you know, with social media, with you know, with the internet, and with you know all these platforms like Stack Overflow, like GitHub. You know, if you just put yourself out there and you do those type of things, I feel like you know, a lot of things will come back at you, right? But the problem that I sometimes see, right? So there's that person who is able to kind of put themselves out there, right? And then there's sometimes that person who's just not able to, who has a harder time at doing that, right? So what do we say to that person who has a harder time of kind of putting themselves on social media? Because I have friends like that, right? Who they don't like social media. They're just afraid of it, right? So what do we say to those friends who are starting out or trying to get in development and so forth?
Yeah, I think there's two things there. So being able to put yourself out there, like I don't know if I was really able to do that on my own. I've been very fortunate to have really amazing mentors. Who at the time I didn't know were mentors.
Right.
That's the funny thing about mentorship. Who kind of encouraged me, right, to do these kind of things, to do public speaking. And so it was kind of, I would say, like a ripple effect. So you do one thing. So you do maybe a presentation at a meetup. It could be a lightning talk of like 5-10 minutes, right? And then you put your slides up online, right? On Twitter or on, I don't know where, right? There's so many possibilities. So you put it up online, and then maybe you get an interaction, right? And then you get this like pause, you get one like maybe, right? And you're like, oh, okay, so people maybe do kind of care what I have to say, right? Because it is kind of scary, like putting it's terrifying to put content out there. I still get scared when I do presentations because I'm like, is someone gonna call me out and be like, that's not right? You know, but I see it as an opportunity now as like, if I did make a mistake, okay, let me know. Oh, okay, you know what? You're right. And like make a change in my presentation. Like I always make a joke. I'm like, oh, I was testing you to make sure.
Really?
You know, you roll with it, right? But yeah, so just to kind of roll back, like it is, I think the reason why people don't want to put themselves out there is, well, I have the same thing as like getting called out for, you know, being wrong or whatever, right? Like people can be really mean online. And so I totally get it, especially with things like Instagram. Like, to be honest, like some days I'm like, I hate Instagram. Why am I on it? This is an awful platform. But then I see people like you and stuff like that where I'm like, oh, but we choose what we consume, right? So I just need to not consume those bad things or those bad comments and focus on the good, right? And that's kind of what keeps me going. But yeah, and just, I mean, you don't necessarily have to be on Instagram or Twitter, but maybe go into like a forum. So like, for example, Auth0, they have a specific forum for their tech. So you don't necessarily even have to go on Stack Overflow, because whether or not Stack Overflow is a welcoming community or not, that's a conversation for something else. But if you're not comfortable on that platform, maybe try a more specific platform like Twilio. I think has their, well, of course they have their community forum. So maybe try like, you know, maybe not posting a question. I think I'm more of the person who will answer a question because I'm scared to post still. I'm not going to lie, a question. So yeah, maybe just like working your way up, right? In baby steps. And, you know, maybe you don't want to do public speaking. That's fine. Do a blog post, right?
Right. So you're saying kind of go to the companies, for example, go to company forums, right? Like help out there, right? Be involved in company forums. Be involved in things like potentially GitHub, right? So be involved in the you know, in open source projects, right? So kind of helping out, and at the same time, not only are you helping out, but at the same time you're putting yourself out there and you're learning at the same time. So and then there's just so many things that are going on, you know. So I think, you know, doing all those things will definitely be helpful for sure. Yeah,
100%. And one of the things that took me by surprise at GitHub was wow, everyone really cares. Like everyone's really nice at the company and even around surrounding the company, right? So there is a possibility to have a bad experience online, whether it be on a GitHub issue even. I mean, it happens, but just know that there are tons of people who'll be super supportive towards you. And like you said, just kind of putting yourself out there.
Yeah. Okay, so I kind of get that in terms of how you put this out. Now, I want to dig a little bit deeper in terms of what qualities do you think, allowed you to kind of to go as far as you are right now, to be able to speak, to be able to, be with this squad. But what kind of qualities internally do you think allowed you to do that kind of stuff, right?
It's a great question, and I hope people don't think that I'm just kind of, because this is a very used word, but I think it's really important, is empathy. 110%. Like people, especially like in software, I feel like a lot of folks still don't understand that it's a lot about relationships, right? It's not just it's not even just working in your dev team, right? Your direct dev team. There's like other teams that you're going to have to work with, right? And some of them are going to be a bit difficult. Some of them are going to be not as easy to work with, right? And so that value of her, that it's so important to have empathy, and it's something you need to work on every day. It's not just you're empathetic and that's it. Like it's something you need to work on every day. So that's a big one, and I can't stress that. So define that empathy. Define that. What does that mean, really? It's a good question. I'm really bad explaining. So it's just realizing that, like, so for one thing, is not everyone is going to share the same opinion as you, right? Right. And so for like, I'm just trying to think of an example. It might be a better way to explain it, but considering, like, let's say maybe you're building something, a feature or whatever, and the way you go about it, you have this really strong like opinion about it, and someone comes to you and says, no, it needs to be done this way, and just realizing that, like, everyone comes from a different place. Everyone is assuming best intentions is really a big thing, and not just straight attacking someone. Like, listen to them, understand why they feel the way they do, and not just listen but acknowledge it, understand it, think about it, try to put yourself in their shoes. It's not easy, especially when things are like on the fly. And really understand like what it is about yours that compares to theirs. And just having a discussion and being human, right? It's not easy, but I think that would be one way to describe it in terms of like software experience. I think it's a very accurate point, because you're going, so I think that all comes down to kind of just being a good team member, right? In terms of just being empathetic, right? Working well with others. That's such an important part in any job. If you're gonna work at a company, you have to be able to know how to work with others, because not only, but like you have to be able to how to take criticism, how to put out your ideas, right? It's not about saying, hey, it's only best if we do it like this and only this, and there's no other way, right? It's about knowing how to present those ideas in a way where it doesn't fully just kill everybody else's ideas, you know what I mean? So because I've dealt with that. I've dealt with that as well, working with companies, working with some maybe a little bit tougher developers where they're very strict by how they go by, and it's just like, and if they don't like something, they will really really sometimes discourage you and so forth, but knowing kind of how to take that and how to communicate that very well is I actually find that to be a very good quality of a developer, and that's actually, I think, is how you probably get higher in the development field, how you move on to a job, or how you potentially even get a raise at the job, because people see that. People see when you're valuable to work with. You're difficult to work with, right? It's not going to be, your team members are just not going to like you as much. Exactly. 100%. You put it way better than I did. No, I love the way you put it. So I gotcha. But I feel like, my question was, okay, so, but what quality besides empathy do you think kind of got you to where you are right now? It's a good question. I think really just, care, like we were saying earlier, like just really caring about what you do. I'm a very emotional person. And that can be a downfall, but I think it can also be a really big strength, right? Because I really want to see success for my team, right? Not just for me. I want to see success for whoever I'm working for, whether that's a customer or just the community, right? Just being like deeply invested in what I do, because that's what helps you get through those difficult times, right? Whether it be working with a difficult team or just working on a really difficult project, right?
Right.
I don't really know how to qualify that as a quality, but just really, caring about what you do. And I think also being very curious and being open-minded to everything in my career was none of this was planned, right? I didn't know really where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And even now, like if you ask me 5-10 years from now, I might tell you something, but that's probably going to change, right? And so being aware of where you are and where you want to go, but also being open to, these things might change, and I don't know where I'm going to end up, and almost enjoying that mysterious, like, I don't know where I'm going to end up, and not being discouraged when something doesn't go right or you don't get that job, because behind the scenes, like sometimes it looks like, oh, I just went from one thing to another, but at one point, like, I was applying and I wasn't getting anything, and I didn't understand, because I was like, I'm a pretty decent human being, I'm a pretty decent coder, like, why aren't I getting a job, right? So there's a lot of things you don't see, but I think those things are just kind of almost with any kind of job, right? Not just in software development, although I think now more than ever it's super important to possess those kind of qualities in software, because we understand more now that it's a team effort, like you were saying, right? So
because the thing is if you actually do enjoy it, then you're gonna go the extra mile. You're gonna do things that most people won't do, right? You're gonna go to hackathons, right? To actually learn. You're going to do work, on GitHub projects, in order to learn, because you really enjoy it. And so I think that quality of enjoying it, and then everything else just kind of supersedes it. Like not wait, I don't know if that's the right word to use. Maybe supersedes it. But everything else is just kind of will happen as long as you just kind of enjoy it, because somehow you're gonna get on the path of people recognize the fact that you like what you're doing, and they like that, and they're gonna take you in, right? And so hopefully you'll be able to get a job, because I know developers who have, some developers I know only go for this for the money. Some developers actually do love it, and what I find is that those that go for the money actually have a really hard time finding a job. I have friends who finish college and they can't find a job. I haven't been able to find a job for the past 7 months, right? Yeah. Even though there's so many jobs out there, right? So so that's kind of where
I think it's also, there's a few things as well, like, especially in school, like I saw a lot of smart kids, or I shouldn't say kids, but a lot of smart people out there, but they would just kind of go to school, go home, and that was it. And that's fine, but you need to know that, like, nowadays, like, you kind of need to do that extra mile and go that extra mile, right? To not only just be out there and be present in networking, but just really to figure out what you like and what you want to do, because school's only going to expose you to X, Y, Z, right? But there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, there's so much more out there, right? And so, and being open to the fact that, like, you might take a job and you might not like it, but now you know that you don't like it, right? And that's why I stress that, like, you should do stuff outside of school, because you get to expose to, let's say, mobile, and then you realize, I hate mobile. Okay, cool. Maybe web is, you know what I mean? Like, trying something and failing and realizing maybe this isn't for me, but then also realizing sometimes, maybe you did fail, but maybe you should keep going, So there's a balance there too, right? But
I gotcha. So, okay, so we kind of got that. I want to ask you now a question of, okay, so, let's say developer does have a job, does get the job, right, at the company. I feel like there's one thing that's not really talked about a lot nowadays, and that's something, and we touched a bit on this, in terms of, you got the job, that's fine. Now, how do you become a valuable developer, right? In terms of, you're there, you're working, but you want to move up. You want to, potentially work on different projects, right? And there's a very big difference between someone who's just kind of doing things and someone who really kind of, like we said, takes the extra mile and, does get a raise. Because I've worked at a company where, for example, some of my friend might have, for example, might make less, right? And he's been working at the company a lot more than I have, and I might make more, right? And so, what's the difference between there? How do you become the valuable developer that a company might value you more?
I think that's a great question. It's a golden question, I guess. No, but I'm still trying to figure that one out. But I think that it just kind of relates back to everything we've sort of been talking about, right? Is being involved, being present, and just when you work with people, like not just thinking about how am I gonna succeed as a developer, but how can I help others succeed as well, right? It's not just about yourself exceeding and excelling, which obviously is it's very, very important, but figuring out as well, like, how can I help others succeed? How can I help my team win together? And then also figuring out where you want to go and how are you going to get there, right? And who are the people that can help you get there in terms of leading, not just in terms of like paperwork, but I mean in terms of training you and prepping you, right? So there's like a senior developer that you think does amazing work, like reaching out to them and being like, what can I do to get where you are, right? And coming to those conversations prepared, though, not just being like, just tell me about what you do and that, right? Like being prepared and being invested, right? About this is where I want to go. This is what I think I need to do to get there. I need to upskill in this. I need to build my leadership skills. I need to do that. And working with them and presenting them that, I mean, not everyone might be receptive to being able to help you. Right. But figuring out, who can you learn from, right?
Yeah, that's a great point you put because I actually did that same thing. Like, I worked at Urban Science. It was a corporate company, and I worked at one team, but it was an internship, but I really wanted to transfer to another team that was a little bit more just did a couple of things that I was more interested in. They were using some machine learning stuff, using the LAMP stack and that kind of stuff. And I literally I messaged the guy who was on the company and that team, and I asked him, "Can I meet with you? I'm working maybe on a similar project. Can I maybe get some advice from you, right?" And I met with the guy. I met with the guy and we just talked, and he gave me some great pointers on a project that I was working with the other team, right? I implemented his points, and then I actually presented that project in front of everybody. Interestingly enough, I think a week later, that team asked me if I wanted to be on their team. Literally, like, just kind of like reaching out, like you said. That I think that's a great point on that. And one other thing I think I want to mention as well is being a valuable developer is being progressive. So what I mean by that, I mean that I worked with what I mean by that is that when someone gives you an idea, or when somebody tells you, okay, we want to go this route in software development, or here's our project, it's very important to not just be the person, to just take everything in and just kind of do it, but provide some feedback. Yeah. Right? You don't want to, have a team member who just kind of does everything that, you're told to do with him, right? You want to be a team member who questions things sometimes, who is not afraid to be like, okay, well, why don't we take this route? Why not this route? This could be better, or this could be better. Because I've worked in different teams, and I've always felt that, no, just tell me what I'm doing wrong, or tell me how this is wrong. Tell me something, And it's not just about just kind of taking it in and just doing it, but I think it's very important to also get some feedback as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah. So okay. So we talked about, how to get the job, how to become a valuable developer. I want to touch a little base in terms of, so I know you work very much in, bringing diversity to, the software development world, and, you care very much about the community. How do you go about doing that?
It's a big question.
Okay, well, just at least touch base on at least one thing, maybe not the whole thing.
Yeah. So I think, there's a lot to peel there, and I'm not sure where to start, so I'll just kind of go through. So I think one of the things that's really important is is it's important to kind of, as an individual. So I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but in the right way. But for the longest time, I didn't want to admit that I was a female programmer, right? Because I don't know if that makes sense, but because I didn't want to bring attention to that, right? I didn't want to be part of that conversation. This is a long time ago, though, right? I didn't want. I guess I was kind of scared to admit that, if that makes sense, because I didn't want to go down that train, not that train. Didn't want to go down that road of
that
like,
path.
Yeah, that path of like having to deal with what it comes with being, let's say, a female programmer. And so realizing that not saying anything is way worse than saying something, right? Because I didn't want to speak up when something wasn't right, because I didn't know how to react. Like, I didn't know if it would be a backlash to me or whatnot, right? And so I think it's important to kind of speak up. Like, it's not easy to speak up when you need to, but to be present and to be a part of making those decisions, right? And so, for example, like let's say you're a student, you're still at university, being part of groups that you want to be a part of, and having a voice and giving feedback, and if it's not a welcoming place, whether you can work with that group to change that, or if it's, not, maybe it's just one of those things where you won't be able to make that change, right? And so you'll need to kind of maybe pursue something else, if that makes sense. It's not the best kind of.
No, I like where you're going with that, because I actually recently had that question. I did a live call with Clever Kazi. I don't know if you know Kazi, a developer, Python developer. I did a live call with him, and one of the questions on there was actually what you're talking about, which is a girl asked, how do I deal with, being feeling like being underrepresented, I guess, in the development community, or something along the lines of that. And I didn't really know how to answer that question, because for me, I don't really judge, who you are as a developer. Like, if you're a developer, great, I want to work with you. If you're interested, I want to work with you. It doesn't matter who you are for me, you know? But I know there's other places, right, where that is the case. So how do you tell that person, or maybe that girl who's a beginner developer, how do you tell them that, either to be, to go out there and so forth?
Yeah, it's not easy, and I think what a lot of it comes down to is, and actually what I'm going to be speaking about next week, is building your support network as a woman in tech, and maybe not just as a woman in tech, but any kind of underrepresented group, right? And it's building out that those people are going to help you and champion you, because some days, it'll be tough. Yeah, you might have interactions with not very good people who will judge you based on XYZ, right? And so I think it's about building out that support network and those people around you, and having those people, those allies, speak up as well, right? So maybe it's not as easy for me to kind of go out there and kind of advocate for myself or the group kind of that I represent, but having those allies speak up as well, right? Like, there's I've had the fortunate opportunity of meeting a lot of really amazing men developers who are able to speak up when something's not right, and that means the world, right? And so working with people to help them make them champions for you as well, right? Because that makes a world of a difference. And like I said, it's not always easy to kind of be able to speak up for yourself. Sometimes I end up in situations where even me, I'm like so shocked at the situation that I'm just speechless, and I'm like, I don't know what to say here. Like,
I'm curious. What kind of situations have you've been with? I'm curious if you don't mind me sharing with me here.
I'm trying to think. Oh, there was one interaction with someone, and I don't. That's the problem. Is like, a lot of times a person might not realize that what they're saying or how they're behaving is actually not good. But just because you don't realize it doesn't mean that it's okay and you should let it slide, right? So I'm trying to remember exactly what they had said, but it was very much like, so this is kind of part of the conversation, but it was something like, they want to attract more female developers towards their product or their like more female developers to their company or whatever. And one of the questions was, how much do I pay like a woman coder? And instantly I was like, the same as a man? Like I was so confused. I was like, is this a joke? Am I on like a TV show? Like a
Really?
And again, like the sad thing is I don't think they realized that what they had said was completely out of like what? Like, and so it's just a silly example, but it's we're still there, you know?
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's not crazy. But that's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say is like I know I haven't been in those situations or I haven't seen those situations personally. So you know, it's great that you kind of said that and you're putting that out there too. And so that's great. You know, it's great that you're speaking, you know, about things like that and being very involved in the community. And you're showing everybody that, you know, software development is really cool and, you know, everybody can be involved with it and everybody is, you know, especially if you're interested in it and if you love it. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter who you are and so forth. So that's awesome. I love that you do that. That's awesome.
And I think also just to mention too is like, if you're looking to be an ally for someone, it's not always even just speaking up for them, but also knowing when to step aside and leave room for other folks to speak up, right? And so there's a bit of a balance there because sometimes you might think that as an ally, you're like, oh, I'm speaking up for you, I'm doing a great job. It's like, no, that's not the right time. Actually, you should step aside and leave room for those people or that person to speak. So just a little note there too. That's important as well to know.
I gotcha. Awesome. So I kind of want to now ask a few more questions in terms of so obviously we talked about how to get into development and so forth. And I want to touch base on so for one, kind of building your portfolio, right? We touched on that a little bit. So let's actually talk about how do you build your portfolio?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, especially if you're starting out new, right, you might not have, a lot of the times it's like, well, I don't have a project or I don't have whatever to put on GitHub. Okay, cool, but what can you do to do that, right? And so I think one of the ways that I started, I think, is I literally just made a website and it didn't really have anything, but it showed that I built it from scratch. You don't necessarily have to. You don't have to build one from scratch as well. Now I use a template or whatever now. But at the time, it was just to kind of show that, like, you know, I kind of knew a bit of web dev at the time. So basically what I tell people when they say, like, I don't have anything to showcase, okay, cool, go build something. And they're like, oh, but that might take a while. No, just build something small. Build this dinky little app. Like, who cares, right? When you're first starting out, it's really just about experimenting, right? And I think that's important because, like, maybe you start building, I'm going to use mobile app because it's just what's in my mind right now. You build a dinky little mobile app that you press the button and it turns blue or whatever. Like, it kind of, you're like, oh, why would I do that? That's useless. Well, no, but that way, when you're in a conversation with a company you're interviewing, you can talk a bit about, okay, well, how did you go about building that? Like, how did you start? What challenges did you encounter, and how did you go about dealing with that challenge, right? And you don't need a big fancy project to talk about those things because that's what they care about, right? They want to know, what are you going to do when you hit a wall? Or what are you going to do when you start from scratch? Like, well, how are you going to start, right? And so think about it that way as, like, you don't need to have this app that's, number one on the Play Store or whatever. It's about having this experience and being able to talk about it, and maybe you're trying out a new language and you found XYZ out about it and you didn't like it, or, like, being able to have these kind of conversations with companies about how you're going to deal with stuff and figuring things out and how do you learn is super valuable, right? So,
that's so true. Because what are they looking for? They really are looking for, how do you go about solving a problem, right? How do you go about having this idea, right, of something, and how do you go about building it? That's when you go on an interview, for example, I want an interview, when you go on any interview, that's when they're testing you. They're presenting a problem for you, and that's why at an interview, they don't really care what language you're using or anything of that sort. They care about how do you go about splitting up the problem, and solving that problem and coming up with a solution, and then maybe potentially even testing it, and so forth. So I think it's, I think it's a very good point that you brought up. It's just do something small. It's about how you go, what process do you take to get there. And then on the interview with any company, they're gonna ask you that question, and then you'll be able to answer that kind of question and explain to them in logically and so forth. So that's a great way. What other ways? What other ways do you think we can they can build out portfolio besides just kind of doing their own projects?
I think also even just I think a lot of people underestimate going to meetups. Like go to meetups, talk to people, and just maybe you don't want to present or anything, but you're out there, you're consuming, and you can write, hey, I'm a member of the JavaScript XYZ group, and talk about that. And like I know it might sound a bit not useful, but it shows that you're out there, and it shows okay, why did you might be able to have a conversation of like, why did you choose JavaScript? Like, what do you find interesting about the talks? Like, what would you change if you had to do a presentation? What would you present on? Like, and start thinking about those things that like those, like maybe you wouldn't think about that, right? But that could be something that you showcase, right? And so I'm thinking about that, little projects, being out there at meetups. GitHub, I think, obviously, for example, Hacktoberfest, right? I know that's coming up, and being involved in that one is going to be important. Yes, so Hacktoberfest is, I'm like, baby, I love it so much. Just that idea, because I always wanted to contribute to open source, right? But it's honestly the scariest thing in the world, right? Especially when you come into a project and like, maybe a certain language, but you don't know how the project works, and it's terrifying. You don't want to you don't want to be seen as asking a stupid question or whatever, but Hacktoberfest is the perfect opportunity for you to go in and see a project, and usually they'll label it beginner friendly or whatever, and it's just the most welcoming kind of event, community event out there. And I think if anyone is interested in getting involved in open source or anything on GitHub, like October will be the time to do that if you don't feel prior, right? And so there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of meetups that happen. DigitalOcean usually gives out like a event in the box, and meetup organizers can go throw those events. So, and there's tons of online events too, like if you're not comfortable going in person, that's fine. There's online events too, and like a lot of times you think maybe I don't have enough to contribute back, but if you go through a question, let's say one that says beginner friendly and there might be steps to do it and you don't understand it, well, make a comment. Why don't you understand? Maybe it isn't clear, what you have to say brings value, and you need to realize that. Like maybe you do have, you're inexperienced, but that inexperience in itself is so valuable, right? Because you're looking at it with a fresh perspective, a fresh pair of eyes. A lot of times these projects, the same people working on it over and over again, amazing people, but they might miss out on something because they've been working on it nonstop, right? So knowing that you bring value no matter what level you are is super important. So
That's awesome. That's it. I mean, like for example, when I went to an interview with Google once, and in the middle of the interview, when we actually had lunch, I had lunch with the Googler, right? And the Googler basically, I asked her about her life and how she got the job at Google, and she didn't have a degree. She really, the way she got the job was through GitHub. She did a project on GitHub. Google saw it, and then after high school, they took her in.
Amazing.
It was crazy, literally, and so she's been working on there for a long time, and she loves it and so forth. So that just kind of shows you how if you just kind of put yourself out there, you should be able to get something, and that's it. Yeah. So Kim, I want where can we find you? We can find you on Instagram, right? Kim Codes.
Yeah, Kim Codes. I tend to I don't know how technical my stuff is on Instagram. I'm always debating about whether I want to keep it more everyday life stuff versus technical stuff, but I'm seeing a lot of people now using Instagram to share technical content and stuff like that. I might do that, but just be aware that you might not always get technical content from me on there. But so I'm Kim Codes on Instagram. Couldn't get Kim Codes on Twitter, unfortunately. So my handle on Twitter is Noel KM. So it's like Noel Kim, but without the I.
Gotcha.
So you can find me there.
And you have a website, right?
Oh my gosh, don't go look at the website. It's so old. Like, it's broken. People, I know it's broken. Thank you. You don't need to let me know. But like I said, like even something like that, having that online, like it's not perfect. Which,
Yeah.
like having something out there is always good. So just
Yeah, like
if your website is whatever, it's probably not as broken as mine. So it's okay.
like I was able to find a lot of things about you on your website. Right? I actually went on your website and I researched a couple of things in terms of what you did. So so that was awesome. And are you speaking next? When are you speaking next? And what topic?
So actually I'll be at Twilio Signal next week, speaking along 3 other amazing women about building a support network for women in tech. So if you're out in San Francisco, let's meet up. And
awesome.
After that, I think I'll be at Grace Hopper actually as well with the same amazing women giving the same talk. So
awesome. I love it. I love it. You must have a lot of fun time like traveling everywhere. I love it. Like just traveling and getting to speak and so forth.
Yeah, I do. A lot of people tell me how lucky I am to be able to travel and do what I love. And yeah, but this took about 5 years to set up, right? Like this didn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
And so and it's not easy. Like it's exhausting. Like last week we tried to connect and it just didn't work out. Like, but yeah. So just know that you can do what you love and still work from home and travel and stuff like that. So.
I love it. I love it. Kim, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. I'm so happy I finally got to see you, like, and talk to you in person. I will see you at some presentation or some speaking event. I for sure know that, and we'll definitely get lunch. I'll buy you lunch, no problem. So
holding you to it. It's on the record now. All right. For talking with me, and it's always great to talk to other people who really love what they do and really care about. The community is always a rewarding thing and keeps me going.
Of course, I love it. All right, Kim, thank you so much. I'll see you later. I'll see you on Instagram, and we'll keep chatting there. Okay.
Awesome. See ya.
I'll see you. Thank you.